Napoleon failed because he stopped too soon, rather than because of the winter. In our timeline, 1812 serves as the graveyard of the Grande Armée, with frozen soldiers and burning cities. The smoke over Moscow could have signaled victory instead of defeat. In this alternate world, the French eagle never fell. The Russian capital moved to the fortress of Vladikavkaz, while the United States of Europe was born on the frozen steppes of a conquered empire, rather than in a Brussels treaty room. History often turns on small details, and this timeline diverges in September 1812. Napoleon turns Moscow into a massive fortified depot instead of waiting for a surrender. The French supply lines hold despite the harsh winter. The Grande Armée advances by spring 1813 rather than retreating. They push east to the Urals and force Tsar Alexander I to make a desperate choice. He abandons the blackened ruins of St. Petersburg and the occupied Kremlin to flee south to the fortress city of Vladikavkaz. The name translates to Lord of the Caucasus, which proved a fitting seat for a monarch who lost the north but kept his crown. This military victory ended the Russian Empire as a European power and signaled its rebirth as a gatekeeper of Asia. The map of Europe dissolved once the Tsar fled to the Caucasus. Napoleon had long claimed his wars were necessary to build a federation, and he finally had the opportunity to prove it. The proclamation of the United States of France replaced the patchwork of conquered kingdoms in 1815. Poland, Belarus, and the new Department of Muscovy became states equal under the law to Burgundy or Provence. The Napoleonic Code replaced local customs and ended serfdom immediately. Millions of peasants in the occupied East traded their chains for French citizenship during this brutal and rapid modernization. The metric system became the standard for trade from Lisbon to the Ural Mountains, to create the first true single market, a century ahead of schedule. The year 1914 marks the start of the Great War in our world. But here it marks the opening of the transcontinental pneumatic railway connecting Paris to Yekaterinburg. The Industrial Revolution accelerated rapidly without the friction of competing European nationalisms. French efficiency managed the vast resources of the Siberian frontier to fuel a major era of scientific discovery. No arms race existed between Germany and Britain, because those nations did not exist in their traditional forms. The military budget shifted to the grand works after conscription ended in 1880. Projects included bridging the Bosphorus, irrigating the steppes, and launching the first atmospheric gliders. The peace was profitable, even if it remained imperfect. The Russians faced a different fate after their displacement to the Caucasus. The Empire of Vladikavkaz focused south to become a major trade center linking the Middle East, Persia, and India. The city transformed from a military outpost into a large stone and steel metropolis, often called the Geneva of the Mountains. Orthodox mysticism combined with Persian mathematics in this new center. They traded with the French Union rather than resenting it. The Great Game ended with a railway gauge agreement instead of war. Vladikavkaz served as the cultural capital of the East by the 1920s, where the Tsar ruled as a constitutional monarch. The loss of an empire ultimately saved the nation in this timeline. History books in 2026 describe Bonaparte as the founder rather than a tyrant. The franc germinal serves as the global currency, while passports are viewed as relics of a barbaric past. Observers view the 19th century as the difficult start of a planetary civilization rather than an era of nations. The burning of Moscow represents the destruction of the old order in this scenario. Unity arrived at the tip of a bayonet, but endured through the ballot box. This alternate history raises questions about whether the freedom of fragmentation was worth the price of 2 world wars. One decision spared an empire and doomed another. Yet something stronger emerged from the destruction. History is often written by the victors, but the unwritten chapters remain equally interesting. Subscribe to explore more worlds that almost existed, such as a Roman industrial revolution or a surviving Carthage. I will see you in the next timeline.